Hello and welcome back to our bedtime story series. So we're back again with little baby George, who's a very young baby but can speak. So his mum and dad know all about it. The doctor came, but George would speak to the doctor. So let's see what other adventures George gets up to. So this evening we're just going to read chapter 6. Okay. George speaks chapter 6. Ordinary babies grizzle or yell when they are uncomfortable or hungry. George made sure from now on that his needs were met. He did it quite simply, not by asking, but by giving orders. At any time of day or night, the cry, "A pot! A pot!" was heard, and someone rushed to do his bidding. Also, he did not wait long before beginning to order his own meals direct. To do all this meant further training for his parents. First, George dropped the parrot fashion trick of repeating what was said to him. To be sure, when his mother said, "Good morning," he replied with those same two words, "But then we all do that." However, when, as was her habit, his mother said, "Who's a good boy?" because the baby always answered "good boy," which made her go weak at the knees, George now replied, "I am, of course." "Oh," cried his mother in delight, "what a clever little ooky-pooky bunny wabbit." "Cut that out," said George sternly, "and I want muesli and banana for breakfast." From that moment, neither George's mother, from shock, nor George, with relief, ever spoke baby talk again. But it was still only Laura that George revealed his full powers of speech and reason. To his parents, he now spoke the occasional short sentence, almost always beginning with, "I want." In front of other relations, his grandparents for example, he usually kept silent, either pretending to be asleep or perhaps favouring them with a gracious smile. "Aren't you a beautiful boy?" they might say. And George would reply, "Yes." "George speaks!" they cried to one another. But George had no intention yet of showing them how much. "I think my first birthday will be the right time," he said to Laura. "Right time for what?" "My maiden speech in the house." "I don't understand," said Laura. George looked at her in a kindly way. "It's difficult for you, I know," he said, "but the time is coming when I shall feel the need of adult conversation. Not that I don't enjoy talking to you, Laura. Don't think that for a moment. But there are lots of things that you don't know much about. Politics, history, religion, the arts. Take writing, for instance. I'm beginning to get the hang of holding a pencil, but at present it won't make the marks I want it to. So I can't put my ideas down on paper yet. That will come. But in the meantime, I'm getting very tired of limiting my gift of speech. So, on my first birthday, I'm going to hoist my flag to the masthead and show myself in my true colours." "I don't know what all that means," said Laura. "You will do, dear," said George, "when you're a little older." In one way especially, George was exactly like every other normal healthy baby. He loved his grub. As long as food was put in front of him, George would eat it. He differed, however, from other babies in being extremely choosy and, of course, in having the power to make his preferences known. Not surprisingly then, George had ordered the food for all his meals on his birthday and had done so well in advance. "My handwriting leaves a certain amount to be desired at present," he said to his mother some days earlier. "So if you will be good enough to fetch paper and pencil, I will dictate the menus to you." "Yes, George," said his mother, and she did as she was told. "Now then," said George, "let us begin the beginning. Breakfast. It is most important to have a good lining to the stomach at the start of the day. It sets you up for the rest of it. Don't you agree, Mummy? Yes, George, his mother said. Right then, said George. I've been thinking about this during our recent visits to the supermarket. For instance, there is a brand of tinned cream called Ambrosia. You know the meaning of that word, I presume? His mother shook her head. George sighed. It means food fit for a god. Rather suitable, don't you think? Yes, George. I'll start with a tin of that, and I should like it well laced with golden syrup. Yes, George. I have a sweet tooth, you see, said George. In fact, and he explored the inside of his mouth with a fat little finger. In fact, I have 10 sweet teeth. George's mother smiled proudly. Is that all you want for breakfast? She said. Oh, goodness me, no, Mummy, said George a trifle sharply. We're talking about meals for my birthday, remember? Special meals, not just the ordinary old humdrum food. Yes, George. What next then? Eggs, said George. Large, brown, free-range eggs. Scrambled. Quite the most civilised way to eat eggs, in my opinion. On toast? If it's done properly, said George. Not the way you and Daddy usually have it. Left to go cold when it comes out of the toaster and then just a scrape of margarine on it. I want my toast spread while it's hot so that the butter sinks into it. Plenty of butter too. West Country Green Pastures is a good brand. And I shall need something to wash it all down with. Orange juice? Ugh, if you mean that stuff that comes out of the cartons, no. Squeeze some fresh oranges, please. Smallish ones for choice. They're sweeter. And add a teaspoon of demerara sugar. Now then, about lunch. Lunch was to be easier for the cook, since George wanted his favourite lamb hot pot with chocolate pudding for afters, but his instructions for his birthday tea were more demanding. There was to be jelly, strawberry, said George, and ice cream, Neapolitan, and banana custard, and tin peaches, and Swiss roll, and of course, the birthday cake. I leave the actual ingredients to you, Mummy, said George graciously. But please be generous with the marzipan and icing sugar. And I'd like some of those pink roses on top. And don't forget the candle. Of course I won't, said his baffled mother. 1 candle, she thought. Can it be true he is only going to be 1 year old? Will that be all, George? She said. Oh, I think so, said George. It's rather modest, I know, but then quality is more important than quantity, don't you think? Afterwards, he told Laura what he had ordered. I must keep my strength up, you see, he said. It's going to be a busy day. I shall have a lot on my plate. You certainly will, said Laura. Indeed. So, what's going to happen at the birthday? So, tune in again tomorrow for chapters 7 and the final chapter 8 to see does George let on to everybody that he can speak. Okay.